all the way up to 9. Whew, it's moving now.
Yeah.
We be moving.
Bring it on.
So tonight is going to be a little difficult, I think, for me. And we're talking about the coming darkness, and certainly I think this year has been one of, what is it? Did I do something wrong already? Huh? Oh. Okay. Thanks, son. I understand completely now because I go through the same thing. But we talked about the coming darkness and where there is darkness and what happens. And next slide, please. The sun, the moon, and the stars comprise the complete unit of natural light. But there has always been a supernatural light that was here for our observation, acceptance, safety. And as we look at 2020 and how 2020 continues to develop, it is more and more important for us to realize that we need a strong, steadfast relationship with Jesus Christ. Amen. More so now than in any other time. I look to the future anymore, and what I see is very frightening. I see a darkness coming. And with that darkness, you need the one that the darkness cannot put out. That light cannot be put out at all. So light, and you can go to the next one. Light symbolizes understanding. Natural light comes from the sun, the moon, and the stars. And so when we think about light, it symbolizes our understanding. So here the natural understanding is darkened. Not all of it when we look at what happened with just 1/3 of the light going out. I want you to understand not all the light is out. Lights, God still has a few that haven't bent or bowed to kiss the feet of Baal. There's still light in the world. As long as God's got a children, as long as God's got a church, the light is going to be here. But again, that's important too, as long as God has a church. If we capitulate and give in, think about how sad that truly is when the world needs the light. If the church should become still, if the church should become darkened, how frightening that has got to be for the rest of the world. We are the beacon of light that the world needs to know that some things do not change. The Ancient of Days does not change. He said, I will keep thee from the hour of great temptation that shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. And we need to have that message out there that men and women, boys and girls understand that the church still has the light. Amen. And it has not gone dim. So and the next slide, please. Darkness produces confusion. And men can no longer see where they are going, and the confusion comes from God. He wants people to realize the situation that they're in. In this particular time, in 2020, the confusion, I believe, has been orchestrated by God because man has gotten to the point where he thinks he can live without God. Yeah. But God has made it quite clear that in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, all things can change. Yeah. But our dependence upon Him should have gotten stronger during this time, Amen. Not weaker. We should be stronger now than we've ever been with God. And if you haven't, I would suggest that you begin to update your prayer life because we certainly need God. And we need Him more now. And from our perspective, we wonder why people don't stop and realize the foolishness of their thinking that they can live without God. But when the darkness comes, it darkens the minds of men and women, boys and girls, and they think that they don't need God. And we have that in our nation today. We have a lot of people thinking that they don't need God at all. And the darkness is beginning to enlarge its borders. So, next slide, please. Just kind of a 2020 update. Our world, having been turned upside down by the COVID-19 pandemic, brings to mind the prophecy of the 3 days of darkness. And it's kind of interesting, this prophecy of 3 days of darkness, because we can't, I guess, how can it not be apparent that our world today is in chaos? I mean, I would think that we would have to be able to identify that. And right now, we're in the danger of anarchy. We have people that are on the streets doing violent things and no one wants to take them down. The police department's hands have been handcuffed. And, you can go out, you look at what's happening out west. And some of the cities run by Democratic governors and mayors that decided that it's okay for somebody to occupy the city as if they're on foreign soil. I think that's wrong for America. And I think it's also wrong because of what they stand for. And what they stand for is anarchy. And unless we wake up, that anarchy is going to be in your neighborhood. Because these people are not going to be, matter of fact, they're going to be encouraged by the fact that there's nobody standing against them. So that's kind of, it's sad, but it's where we are. And so, and this prophetic thing that I'm going to talk about tonight, it comes from an unexpected source. This 3 days of darkness was prophesied by the Catholic Church. Now, I don't know what happened since that prophecy was made. But it is something I think that we should consider, because it was made by a nun who had spent her time in fasting and prayer, and she made this prophecy about the coming darkness in the 1800s. But I just kind of want you to listen to the prophecy. You can choose whether or not you want to believe this prophecy, but from now on, you're probably going to hear more of the current prophecies that are out there. I told you about the fellow down in Kentucky and his prophecy. Others, another prophet said that he believed that probably by November or December we would see Russian or Chinese soldiers in America. And we think that's an impossibility. But then again, did you think that the world could stop in a day? You didn't think that either. But here's the thing. If anarchy continues the way it is right now with these people, this Antifa and Black Lives Matter, there's going to be a need to restore order. Even Nancy Pelosi, in a moment of lucidness, said that this rioting has to stop. It's good that she finally caught up with the rest of the United States. But that's because the polls have suggested that our president is on track. And they don't like that too much. But if anarchy would continue in the streets of New York, probably the individuals that would intervene would be the United Nations. The United Nations represents not our interests, and haven't for a long time. But that's another prophecy for another time. I just want you to know these are the things that are out there, and we can say they're all conspiracy theorists. But I want you to listen to this. During these days of darkness, terrifying darkness, no windows should be open, because no one will be able to see the earth and the terrible color it will have in those days of punishment without dying at once. The sky will be on fire, the earth will split, and during these 3 days of darkness, let the blessed candle be lit everywhere. No other light will shine. No one outside his shelter will survive. You must stay at home. The earth will shake from the judgments and fear that's come upon her. No, not one will perish. We need them to, it talks about, it says, but we will listen to the prayers of those that are my friend, and not one of them will perish. That's kind of interesting. Now, this was the 8th of December, 1888, or 1882. On this terrible occasion, so many of these wicked men, enemies of church and God, shall be killed by a divine pandemic or scourge, that their corpses will be as numerous as the fishes. All the enemies of the church, in secret as well as known, will perish over the whole earth during this universal darkness, with the exception of some few whom God soon will convert. The air will be infested by demons who will appear under all sorts of hideous forms. Religions shall be persecuted. The churches shall be closed, but only for a short time. The Pope will be obliged to leave Rome. Now, I've been looking at some of the stuff that he's done recently, and there is a movement underfoot to replace him. But it says all the states And it's interesting that she says this because, you know, you don't think of some of the foreign countries as having states like ours. You know, it's the United States, but it says all the states will be shaken by war, and civil war will come to those states. Right now, we do have a lot of people that are pushing the United States towards a civil war. We're afraid about what's going to happen in our election. We're afraid. I mean, my goodness sakes, I still don't understand why people in America are as confused as they are about who they should, unless, of course, the darkness has blinded them to the truth, and they're incapable of seeing the truth anymore. How can you be in any political party, it doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, American Party, the Patriot Party, how can you believe in anything that says it's okay to abort a baby? And they said, well, preacher, you're talking about the Democrats and Democrats only. No, I am not. I am talking about a God who said, I knew you from your mother's womb.
Right. Amen.
Now, this is a different story, you see. Well, we don't like to talk about that kind of thing because, it brings it right home. It brings it, and you say, well, it's political and you shouldn't have anything to do with it. I think that you need to understand that this country was formed by men that would stand behind the pulpit and declare the counsel of God, and they left their pulpits to get a rifle to defend the very nation and what they believed in. And what did they believe in? Freedom of religion. Nobody had a right to make a law that forbade them from worshiping. And yet we have governors today that are doing exactly that. Now, I want you to understand, and I want everybody, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from my family too. They all really wonder about me, and I don't blame them. I am a stranger in a strange land. But there's a lot more going on than what people realize. Now, people say that I don't believe that there is a COVID virus out there. Well, that's just absolutely stupid on your part. Of course I know there's a COVID virus out there. But I also know I'm just as likely to get COVID virus as the next guy who happens to go to Kroger or Walmart. But if I go to church, it's 20 times higher all of a sudden than all these other places. That does not make a bit of sense to me. Of course, I'm not a genius. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. I would suggest to all of you that are worried about whether or not if you come to church you get the COVID, do not go grocery shopping. Your chances are higher there. I mean, everybody is handling that stuff from every state in the union, sending it to you. Well, COVID only can live 2 days. Well, no, that was last week. See, it changes every 30 seconds. And I'm telling you, I am taking a tremendous hit right now, even talking about this stuff, because people are convinced and persuaded that I put you all at risk. And that's the truth. You all are at risk. You might all get COVID next week. But if you die, you can at least go to glory saying, Lord, I was in your church. Instead of Walmart. Again, where clothing is optional. This nun goes on to say all states will be shaken by this civil war. And in this lasting 3 days, those that are evil will perish, but a fourth of mankind only. You know, some time ago, people like myself, and my brother can attest to this because he called me a prepper, because I kept saying we need to supply, we need to put stuff away. And he said, you know, brother, well, he called me pastor then, and he's watching tonight. He said, you're just a prepper. I am, Ronnie. I want you to know that. But you know what? As this 2020 has progressed, I find myself doing what I've always done for the last 38 years, pastoring churches. And that's seeking the word of the Lord and trying to find his focus for me for the coming year. And this time in 2020, something different has happened as I began to pray and listen and say, here am I, Lord, speak. I have a deeper love for the body of Christ. And I want to tell you that the former things have come to pass, and the new things I declare on you, they spring forth before I tell you of them. That's what Isaiah said in 42:9. Just as the Lord proclaimed to Samuel the fulfillment of his prophecy concerning judgment of the leaders who were unfaithful and the establishment of faithful leaders over his house, so now I believe that God is coming to judge the church leaders. I think it's going to start here in the house of God. For judgment begins in the house of God. And where should it not, that judgment begin? First of all and foremost, it should begin with the pastors, who no longer are given the full counsel of God to the people. And I think God is going to judge them first. He will divinely remove the unfit and raise up his chosen prophets who know the signs of the times and is not afraid to tell the people what's about to happen. Next slide, please. A time of trouble is coming. Is there another slide right after that? There you go. A time of trouble is coming. Darkness. Things are missing. We still have some light, but not all the light. And Daniel 12, whenever you read that, is a continuation of the angel's words to Daniel. It begins, at that time, the time of the end, and the incursion of all that's happening, the king of the north, the Middle East, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the children. And there will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Now, this decade has seen the shaking of all things, even in the church. Yeah. Even in the church. Yeah. And I think that God is saying my church can be shaken too. And maybe we need that shaking. Maybe we need the church to shake again so that it wakes up. And starts getting back to a time of prayer when we had an expectation that something was going to happen. Yeah. Something great was going to happen. I was working on my message for Sunday this week, and I think I'm just going to take the whole entire service and preach a praise message. Right. The reason being is because of the fact that I want to tell him I'm one of his. I want him to know that. And while I'm telling them that, I hope you'll join me Sunday in praising God. My church can be shaken. Culture, politics, economic, social norms of the world system will be shaken. And we have that now, don't we? We certainly do. And we will remain, he said, my church, what will remain is the pure light of faith and hope and love, and everything that is not founded on these three are going to be removed. In other words, God is saying, the time of trouble is coming, and it's going to shake everybody. Now, those of you that are born again, washed in the blood of Jesus Christ, you are not here in this part of the physical application of the book of tribulation. When these things begin to happen, the church will be gone. But the things that are being revealed during this time is for the church right now. There is both the physical application and the spiritual application, and we should see that. Remember when he said, at one time he said to Saul, he said, why do you wish to kick against the pricks? It is time for us to get rid of that stuff that keeps us in that spiritual climate that we've been in for so long, and let God have full dominion over us and get loose and start praising him correctly. Here is the mystery of overcoming. Next slide, please. The last days of the church, and I believe that we're in the last days of the church. I think you and I are going to be the witness for the final moments of time. I do. I feel that way. And somebody says, well, what happens if we last another 100 years? I still will praise God. Doesn't matter. I don't think we have that kind of time. That's what I'm seeing today. So here's the secret. He said, first love me with all that is in you. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your soul. We go back to that, right? So oftentimes we are inundated with other things that we love more than God. And if you would be honest with yourself, you would know that there are some things that you are so comfortable with, no matter what God says, you're not going to change it. And just That's a very frightening place to be. Very frightening place to be. Because he said, I want you to lay aside everything that can disappoint. Wow. Oh, I don't know that. I mean, people are still talking to me all the time. They'll say to me, and I want you to understand, I'm not giving an opinion here. I just want you to think about this. You know, people say to me, Pastor, how can you say that to take a drink of wine is a sin? I never said it was. But somebody did. Somebody must have said it to you. I'm not your judge. But if you drink a little wine for your often infirmities and your stomach's sake, or whatever excuse you use, if God tells you, I don't think that's right, is there anything to arbitrate anymore? Is there anything to discuss anymore? It's done at that point. If God comes to you and says to you, I don't think that you should smoke cigarettes, it's bad for your health. Why would you say, well, I think I need to think this over? If God comes to you and says, your language is atrocious, knock it off. Why would you say that that's something you want to think about? What I'm trying to tell you, it is time for the church to get past that. When the Holy Spirit begins to convict, you should not even think about how to find a loophole to get out of it. You just say, Lord, I embrace that. Hold my faith plan for you until it is completed, is what he's trying to tell us. And I think God is telling us the church is going to brightly burn in this coming darkness. Now, I know that there's a song out there. It's by... the ones I like, so 11th Hour. And it's Can This Church Burn? Have you heard it? Can the church burn? He says, you know, I want you to burn. I want you to light up, is what he's saying in the song. It's a beautiful song because I think we need to light up. I think this is a decade of new horizons for the church. None of us is expecting 2020. I don't know. I was talking, matter of fact, I talked to this preacher 2 days ago. And he said, can you come to my church and preach on a Sunday night for me? And would you bring your gospel group to sing for us? I said, you know, we're not that good. He said, to me, you are really, really good. He said, would you come? And I said, sure. Today, he's in the hospital fighting for his life. Not COVID, something else. Almost all the places that I'm looking right now, and the only thing people are looking at is COVID, but right now in the church, all around the church, in families, so on and so forth, that darkness that I'm talking about, that evil one, that one that brings mischief, is hitting in every situation that it can. And people are struggling right now to hold on. That's also one of the reasons I wanted to start the pantry too, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I want our people to be able to go and get a bag of food if they need to go home. And it'll be here. I think the church needs to burn more brightly in these last days of darkness than at any time. We wonder at the senseless philosophies that pour out of the mouths of leaders and of the educated, professing to be wise. They become fools, and we all need the light of Jesus Christ to enlighten us. Without his light, our natural understanding is darkened. We need him. My, do we need him. Exactly right. More than we ever have before. We need this relationship with God. Did you notice, and I want you to know, as we started into this chapter, and I want you to get this, every time that the trumpet is sounded, it is sounded at something that supports life. I think when you get a chance to read that, read it. Every time that the trumpets are sounded, it's sounded towards something that supports life. If you could go to the next slide, please. The current darkness is this way. Let's erase and or dismantle the U.S. Constitution. I've got to tell you, that little document that we have has a great deal of hope in it. But they want to dismantle it. we don't want the Constitution anymore. Fake news, filled with lies and hate. It doesn't matter if you're on Facebook or if you're on NBC, ABC, LGBT, all of the networks. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty sure that the LGBT organization owns half of the networks, because you cannot watch another program in the United States without somebody showing up that is a fringe element of society. And I'm going to get it, I know it. So a lot of people watch this now, and I just hope that all of them that watch him will rally around me when I'm off to prison. Abortion holocaust, 65 million since 1973. That's kind of hard to justify, that many babies being killed since 1973. Justice Ginsburg died. She was a staunch supporter of abortion on demand. And I really hope that in the last moments of her life, she was able to reflect about her position with God. Because this stuff doesn't go away, is what I'm trying to tell you, church. It's there. And I can look at your faces tonight, and I know that I am probably not speaking popular jargon, but it's still the coming darkness. Defund police. I misspelled a word, and I am so sorry. That's supposed to be anarchy, not narky. But it shows that I don't know what narky ruckles are. But narky ruckles are bad. I'm telling you that right now. They are totally and completely bad. But if anybody wants to know who makes my slides, right here. That should say anarchy rules. But narky ruckles is bad too. So, if you defund the police, who's going to stand in the... You know, everybody says the same thing. Let's defund them, let's defund them. You having a problem? Yes, call 911. Gun control. It's already been proven that if you can find a way to get all armament out of the hands of private citizens, you have nothing left but docile sheep. Tyranny rule, and that's what we have today. We have, and globalism. Next slide, please. Globalism is everywhere. So no God, secularism, that leads to depravity, and that's what they want. We don't want to talk about God in any situation. Get him out of our government. Get him out of our schools. Get him out of everything. If God is gone, then only secularism remains. The only thing that we have to worry about is depravity, and depravity's, it's acceptable. If you happen to be in California, you pass a law to make the pedophiles a little bit easier for them, and they wonder why it's on fire. Open borders, amnesty. Sexual orientation, gender dysphoria, Common Core. 1619 Project, remake the truth into a lie. If you can do that, if you can take away everything that this country was built on, then it's pretty easy to no longer have patriotism, nationalism. No, it's gone. Next slide, please. So I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven. I got to tell you, man's life support has to be taken away so he sees the need of God. And the plagues that came upon Egypt were directed at their life support system. And I told you, every trumpet is directly blown against something that sustains life. In Egypt, they depended on the Nile River, and God took their source of life and turned it into death. You remember that? The first thing that he did. He turned the water into blood. And that was the first plague that God sent them. Life had been smitten with their life had been smitten with God's plagues. God smote the dust of the earth, and the very earth in which they walked, he also called forth locusts, and they ate up all that was green, and the Egyptians were left destitute. God was meeting them exactly where they lived, and God is doing the same thing today. God is meeting us where we live. If we have hope in this world only, we are men of most miserable. Some of us believe that somehow, miraculously, everything is going to stay the way it is. But we now know that in a couple of days, the grocery stores can be emptied. Things that we take for granted every day can be gone. All in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. He said, I looked, and I saw an eagle flying in mid-heaven, actually in the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels that are about to sound. The eagle in mid-heaven is a word occurring three times, or several times in Revelation. In each case, there's an angel standing in the sky along with the birds of heaven. And the next slide, please. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth. Three more woes are coming our way. Now, I would say that 2020 has been a bad year. How many of you agree with me? Okay. Let's say that some of the stuff that we were talking about is a prelude to what's going to happen. Okay? And now he says, that's just the beginning. There's more to come. More to come. And I think that we need to understand why we need a better relationship with God more now than ever before, because this is just the beginning. This is not over. This is just the beginning. The eagle cries with a loud voice, woe, and all the world hears that pronouncement of woe. And those that hear it are the inhabitants of the earth and the ones under God's judgment. Woe was used by the prophets to announce impending doom. There's a fact. Even God's people use that on occasion. Remember the prophet of God who said, woe is me, for I am a man of unclean lips that dwell among a people of unclean lips. So to the church, woe is you, because you are people of clean lips that's dwelling among a people of unclean lips. And you know that that's true already. You don't even have to wait for it. Whenever you bring up God, it immediately becomes an aggravation in family, workplace, so on and so forth. You can talk about anything you want to, but if you bring up God, it becomes a battle. Because we have a whole lot of people that have not been convinced just yet that there is a God. People want to know why God is going to use tribulation, because God needs to wake up to the world to wake up to the fact that He is God, and everything He said is going to happen is going to happen. And we don't like that too much. The Hebrew word calls attention to what was being said, something like, hey, look at this. And so by calling these last three trumpet blasts as woes, we're being told that the end of all things is very near too. Judgment is coming. If the fourth trumpet had a hint of demonic activity, well, and I believe that it does, and the fifth and sixth will be entirely demonic. That's kind of scary, don't you think? And I think there's a lot of evidence of demonic activity, because I don't think that some of the stuff that could happen is happening. I mean, I'm listening to the news, and the news is certainly convoluted. It all depends on which news you listen to, and it is very frightening what's going on, and we don't know what the next election is going to be like. Go to the next slide, please. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven, which had fallen to the earth as the sky of the bottom, as the key, no, I can't read it, which has fallen to the earth, and the key to the bottomless pit was given to him. You see, I said it's getting worse, and it certainly is. It's getting a lot worse. And I got to thinking about some of the things that's going to happen, and I'm going to try to now go back and forth between the physical and the spiritual application. And I'll try that if I mess you up, I'm sorry before I start. we know that the first woe was pretty bad. And now the fifth trumpet sound and a message of woe to those who are living on the earth. God is telling us that this message of woe was coming in a word of grace. What? How can that be? How can the word, this awful thing, be in a word of grace? Because he wrote it before it happened. So you're receiving this in a time of grace. This word, these woes, you're receiving this in a time of grace. Right now, the Lord is still on the mercy seat. You can still get forgiveness. The church still has an opportunity to get closer to Him than they've ever been. So the thing is, and we need to understand it, that we are looking now at a time of grace. When God shows us the sinfulness of our carnal nature, we feel the woe, and He shows us His grace, and we come into joy. Those things in our life were revealed, and we became children of God. God is now doing this whole thing for the whole entire world, trying to make them see. And He tried to make them see long before we ever get to this part of our lives. In a time of grace, He delivered the word long before it ever happened, so that we would have time to repent. Next slide, please. So after the fifth sound sounded, and you know, this is kind of an interesting time, because after the fifth angel sounded, the trumpet of a star fell from heaven. The key of the bottomless pit was given to him. The star is not one of the stars of the sky, of course. The star is it is an angel that is up there, and you start to say, who is this star? This star that has the keys. Well, we already know who that star is. We know who has the keys to hell and death, right? And His name is Jesus Christ. We need to understand that even in the midst of all of the things that are coming, grace is materialized here. You can see the act of grace here, because He's the God. He's the only one that had the keys to hell and death. And so we see the keys to death and Hades were given to Christ, the living one. He also has the key of the bottomless pit. The next slide, please. No, go back one more time. If you can go back. This is a strange happening, since we read in the previous chapter that the next three angels would be sounding messages of woe. And we know this is the first woe. Next slide, please. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Next slide. And all of a sudden, everything is going to change now. And we don't think about that. We don't think about that, and we really should. Because you see, the thing is, if a star fell down to the earth, we would be completely destroyed, right? Because every star is probably larger than the earth. And but you remember a little something about Jesus. I just want to go back and give you a little bit of a refresher. He was crucified. He was resurrected. He came to our earth, and He changed us. He broke the chains that bound us, and He picked the locks that kept us from Him. And He did all of that so that we, in grace, would have a life that we have now, an abundant life in Christ. Next slide, please. Keys represent the authority to unlock doors. The keys that I have in my pocket, they give me authority to open up my door at home. They give me the authority to start my car. Keys are a symbol of authority. And the one who holds the keys, has the authority. In contrast to our very limited authority, He had the chains. He has the key. He has it, everything. All things are given to Him. We need to understand this, because the devil has tried his very best to persuade us that God is not strong enough, powerful enough to keep us in the latter days. But God has given us, through Jesus Christ, power to overcome. We are not destroyed. We're cast down sometimes, but we are not destroyed. We get back up. And so now we're looking at another area. This includes the keys to hell, death, and the bottomless pit. And so I started thinking about, what does this bottomless pit symbolize? First of all, bottomless pit has no foundation, does it? And neither do lies and deception have a foundation. Remember, the very first writer was all about deception. He came out to destroy the world through lies and deceit. But there's no way to stop it once it gets going. And now we are in a time for the United States like we've never been. I don't know that the United States could withstand an invasion. Because we have been lied to so long that no longer do we have patriotism and a desire to protect what God has given us. Because lies and deceit has undermined a great deal of America. Oh, there are some that still remain, that are going to be here, and I believe that. You know, Jesus said it this way. He said, when the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? Yes, he will. Some of us are still going to be waiting with anticipation his arrival, and we're not going to give in. And right now, I'm telling you, the devil is doing everything that he can to erase the very ideology of God, if he can. And this bottomless pit, there is no limit or bottom to the lies that are fabricated in the carnal mind. And today, we have people in Washington and in other places that have fabricated some of the greatest lies the world has ever known. And they have absolutely subjected America to these lies to the point where we no longer know what the truth is. And the Bible said that truth has died in the streets. We don't like that too much, but it's still the truth. And I know tonight is not a good lesson for having dessert later on. Lies don't have a foundation. So the bottomless pit is not in the spiritual form, the center of the earth. It's actually the center of the carnal mind. And so Christ had the key that opens our carnal mind. And he did. And he is the truth. Remember, that was the big question. Pilate said, who are you? He said, I'm truth. Man, the carnal mind for Pilate was not open. He said, what is truth? Today, we have the same thing. People are saying, your truth is not the same as my truth. So the foundational stones are no longer there anymore. And we talked about this, you know, that all opinions are equal. That's one of the things that the devil's doing to destroy America. All opinions are equal, and we know that that's ludicrous. And we talked about it before. I gave you an example. If you have a head injury and you're laying there with a head injury and two people come by, one's a plumber and one's a neurosurgeon, which one do you want an opinion from? I think I'd take the neurosurgeon, yeah. Another plumber may help a little if he's got enough spigots on him that he can do a tree fine. Oh, that's where they bore a little hole in your head and take out the oh, never mind. God is truth, and only he can expose a lie. And that's why the church should be upset today about what's going on, because we are being inundated with the truth of God, saying all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. Lift up your head. Your redemption draweth nigh. Next slide, please. So, how can a word of grace be a woe at the same time? When we talked about that, how can there be grace in a word that brings grief and suffering? Well, Jesus came to this earth, and through his death, his suffering, he gave us all grace. And I want you to understand, because a lot of times we don't look at, and we're going to get into the physical application because I think it is astounding what other things are here. But I think that we should be able to see something else as well. And that is that even our God, knowing that these things were gave us, let's see, what is the year? This is 20. If you take off 96 from 2020, how many years do you have left? Somebody, do we have a math genius? Any math genius here? Get your calculators out, because none of you are going to give me this answer. Just yell it out when you finally figure out where your calculator is on your phones. No. Okay. I want you to take 96 from 2020. $1,924 years God has given us to live with this message about the coming end. We think God is unmerciful. Think about this for a minute. 1,924 years gave us of grace to receive this message. You see, because John was given this prophecy in 96 AD. 1,924 years God has said, I'm coming back. And these things are going to happen before I come back. But I want you to know beforehand, I give you these years of grace, 1,924 years of grace, to come to the realization that I am God, and beside me there is no other. Our wrong thinking has caused us to think that God is unmerciful. That's carnal. That's carnal. 1,924 years He's given us to accept the message of His grace since John wrote this prophecy. But lies and deception, trouble and trials for us, it's come to cause us, and by the way, sometimes trials and trouble are necessary for us to understand the ability that lies to help us in God. Jesus is there, and only truth can free us from our bondage to this world. This world right now is spewing out a hatred and a darkness that is uncommonly evil, and we need to be able to rise above that in Jesus Christ, to realize that we are not. This isn't it. This is not all there is. There's something better coming for us. Yeah. So, next slide, please. He opened up the bottomless pit. And out of there came smoke and these things. And these things could be a little bit... the Bible says He opened the bottomless pit, smoke went up out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. Smoke obscures, right? Smoke obscures. You can't really see what's going on until it appears. Whatever's coming out of that pit comes out in the smoke, and we're unaware of how bad it is until it's here. Certainly, it is very, very demonstrable of the day that we're living in. So many people have used lies and deceit and everything else to cover up everything that's going on in Washington. I mean, my goodness sakes, we have people that have been on the payroll of China's payroll for years that have been in offices of power in our nation. Not only them, but their families. But I don't know if they're going to do any prosecution, because they certainly don't want to take down one of their own. It's exactly why Trump is hated. Because he wants to drain the swamp. And there is a swamp in Washington. Okay, all the Democrats are mad at me. I know that. Yes, I get it. I understand that. But I'm not a Republican. I'm a Christian. Maybe that's put me in a bad... And I know, I've been told, never say anything political because it could cost me the pulpit. But if I go down, somebody will stand up. This is not all there is. If they take me down, somebody else will stand up. Now, let me just go on. How much time do I have? Because oh, come on. I only got started, too. That's not good. Oh, it's not her fault when I say come on. I mean, I'm the one talking. Go on to the next slide. Let me see what it is. I don't think I'd want to meet up with one of these things. I'm just saying. This is an artist's conception of what's going to come out of that smoke. Has the face of a man and a woman's hair. It doesn't know if it's male or female. Oh. Maybe some of you are getting it now. Its sting is in its tail. And the tail here will be the false prophet and false prophecies that are going to be unleashed to sting. So, I think people have a wrong... the opening of this pit caused the air to be filled with smoke, and out of it, and nobody's seen what was coming out of there. But out of there and coming out of something, coming out of a darkened closet, a darkened basement, a philosophy that now wants to tell you know, I didn't know this. Chrissy told me that Netflix has a film out there called Cuties, right? It's Cuties. Now, they've changed the name of Cuties to something else so they can hide it a little bit better. I just completely eliminated my subscription to Netflix because I don't want to support such a hellish operation as that. This is all about children porn. But that's okay. You know, you have to be a little bit... I don't have to be acceptable to any of this stuff. I mean, if it comes out of the smoke and I know it come from hell, it's hellish. Oh, no, preacher, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. What do you mean, I'm going to? You should get my mail. It's a lovely thing. I should probably spend a lot more time on this. Matter of fact, though, give me the next one. It's going to last for 5 months of torment, and the next one, because I need to get a little bit further. But this, things that come out of the smoke, has a king. Now, this is an artist's conception of what the king might have looked like. I truly don't know what he looks like. His name is Apollyon. It's the devil. It is Lucifer. I think if Lucifer looked like this, there would be nobody that followed him. So I think the artist is wrong here. Matter of fact, I think he should probably be beautiful. Because Lucifer was like the morning sun. He was beautiful. If he looked like this, you wouldn't follow him, would you? No, you wouldn't. But these things had a king that ruled them. These things that didn't know if they were male or female, these things that came up that sting and torment mankind, they had a king. And sometimes we think that there is absolutely no power on earth that can stop the darkness that is coming. But you got to remember there is a king above all kings. It's important for us to remember that. Next slide, please. So again, this thing comes out of the smoke. Whenever the devil wants to do anything, he wants to obscure it in a great deal of smoke so that nobody really sees what happens until it's already out there. We really didn't think that Madeline Murray O'Hara coming out of the smoke would be able to get prayer totally removed from schools, but she did. And most of us never really anticipated, and we lost that battle, really. We've lost a lot of battles trying to pick a battle to fight. There's always some other battle we're going to have to fight. But you got to understand, out of the darkness is coming some very atrocious demons. And they're very frightening. And we don't see them until they're here. That's what the smoke is for, is to keep them hidden until they move. Go to the next one, please, because I know I'm out of time. This is the thought. They give a description of what it came out was like a scorpion. This is one of our helicopters. I don't know what John saw, but I'm just looking at the physical application as well as the spiritual side. You know, we say that those things couldn't happen. Well, I don't know. It's possible that we enter a time of great upheaval, civil war, all these things. And what John thought as scorpions could have been a helicopter. In the physical application, what I'm trying to tell you, out of the smoke, until the enemy attacked, you don't know it. How many of people had any idea what was going to happen in Pearl Harbor But all of a sudden, on a particular morning, everything let loose. What I'm trying to tell you is, and I'll stop here because I don't think I should go any further because I won't have enough time. All I'm saying is sometimes we look at the physical application, we miss the spiritual, but the spiritual application and the physical application ought to be taken into consideration. I know that this world is changing and there is a great battle that is coming. And I think that when John was looking, he was looking at all of those things. But he was also, I think, commanded by God to write it in such a way that we would also see the spiritual application at the same time. And there is a spiritual application. But let's go back to the darkness. Go back. Well, you don't have to go back. Just leave it there. Oh, go to the next one just in case I'm wrong. Yeah, okay. So the first woe is past. Behold, two woes are still coming after these things. After these things are out here. After that which was hidden becomes exposed. I don't know how long we're going to be on the coming darkness, but I still have 64 pages of notes. Because when I had those before, I kept writing. And I'll try to spell the words right next time. Because, what did I say? Ruggles. Narky Ruggles. It's hard to read. Well, let me just say this. I want people to understand that I'm not trying to be political, but I am far from politically correct. I have no desire to speak in such a form. I will always speak to you what I feel. And the good news is, when you get tired of this, you can leave at any time. And if you guys would like to have another study besides this one, which is certainly not the funnest study we've ever been in, but still true for our day. Yes. The world is changing. Hold fast that which you have. It's the only thing that's going to keep you in the future. So again, tonight as we leave $1 up here or to Maryland for the pantry, and things are going well there. And I'm hoping that we now have 3-4 volunteers that are trying to put the pantry together. Who knows what the future is going to hold? Hopefully, the church will support as many as we can for as long as we can. And then we'll pray harder than we ever had, and out of our prayers, God will deliver a loaf of bread. Amen.